3 minutes.
Okay, that's okay. I'll start the show without you. Hey everybody, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. So if you're unfamiliar with me or my work or my channel or my show, what happened is at the beginning of the pandemic, which I don't know, maybe when we started sheltering in place, I think it was March 20th, 2 days before my 60th birthday, which never happened in captivity. I wanted to go live to my community. And I'm not very good with technology. I didn't get an iPhone till like a couple of years ago, and it's just not my strong suit, technology. And I pushed the wrong button. So instead of going live to my private Facebook group, I went live everywhere, and people seem to appreciate the connection during this time. And so I started going live quite a bit, 1 to 3 times a day. And I got a little tired of hearing myself talk. So I had asked a bunch of my friends, who a lot of them are doctors and chefs, if they would come on. And then it became a thing, a show, which I call Chef AJ Live. And I've now done 355 shows since March 20th, which means I'm doing at least one a day. I haven't had a day off since then, and I'm not going to have a day off until I'm booked till March 27th of next year. And then I'm going to have to take a day off at some point. And so many people have written and to be on, like hundreds, literally. And that's why I'm booked, because most guests that have been on, they want to come back because they have a good experience, and the people like them. So what has happened is we've had over 350 guests. Hi, Vanessa. And the first time this happened is one of them has passed away, and she was very, very special. Her name was Dr. Rosa Gershfeld, and she is the grandmother of Dr. Nate Gershfeld. You might know Dr. Nate Gershfeld. He's been on the show. He is the producer of my favorite podcast, Beat Your Genes, with Dr. Doug Lisle and Dr. Jen Hawk. He's also a doctor who has a fasting escape in Yorba Linda, where you can get well and recover from your food addiction and lose weight and reverse heart disease and all kinds of things like that. And actually, he was inspired by his grandma to become a doctor. And he's going to tell some stories today. And she was very passionate about life. And we're very sorry that she passed away, especially during the holidays. And we will miss her very much. I feel like I had just gotten to know her and started following her on Instagram. So I'm very honored that she was on the show, and we'll dedicate today's show to her memory. So please welcome the grandson of Dr. Rosa Gershfeld, Dr. Nate Gershfeld. Thank you for coming back and talking about your wonderful grandma and what she meant to you and what her life can stand for other people.
Thank you so much, Chef AJ. Yeah, she will be missed, but she lived a life that I think many people just dream of living. She didn't have, I got really lucky, to have a grandma like this, and I also got lucky that we were kind of in a similar mentality about health and wellness. That's, I think, as Dr. Lisle would say, it's in the genes, and so I just got lucky that we were as close as we were. I also got really lucky because I was able to actually talk to her the afternoon. The last phone call we had was the afternoon. The next evening, the next morning she didn't wake up. And in one of the episodes in the Beat Your Genes podcast, Dr. Lisle actually describes the difference between a vicious cycle and a virtuous cycle. And a vicious cycle is when people are not very close. They're not really esteeming each other. They're not really complimenting each other. They really don't respect each other. And so it ends up being a vicious cycle, because if someone doesn't like you, then the threat is that they're going to be spreading bad news about your reputation in the village. And so you're now designed by nature to essentially tell everybody else that they have poor judgment. And in the opposite way, a virtuous cycle is when the opposite is happening, where you're complimenting somebody, when you're telling them how great they are and what you respect about them and what you admire about them. And it keeps going, because now they're motivated to say that you have excellent judgment. And so my grandma and I, when we would talk on the phone, we would kind of get into these virtuous cycles where she would tell me that she was proud of me for, what I'm doing. And I would tell her how much of an inspiration she was for how, how she's influenced me, and that I, enjoy spending time with her. Well, that afternoon, I just randomly called her. I was just calling her just to say hi and talk about this. She wanted to do her YouTube video on her vegan borscht. She was making notes and had written the recipe down and was brainstorming when we were going to do this. And so we were chatting about that. And then, I could always tell when she started complimenting me, I could tell she liked that feeling so much. And we started getting that virtuous cycle. And I just got lucky because, every time we did that, it was, I would tell her all the things that I would normally have told her had I known that something was going to happen and that she wouldn't wake up the next morning. And so it just really, I got lucky that it went down like that. one thing that somebody actually at the funeral came up to me and asked me, like, well, she was so healthy. I actually didn't expect her to pass away. I thought she'd be living here 20 more years. And this is something, we'll hear a lot in the diet community, the plant-based community, where everyone says, well, if you're eating so healthy, what's the deal? And what I have to say about that is that my understanding of the data about longevity and living longer, essentially living longer, and diet and lifestyle, is that you can't really extend your life by very much. Okay, by changing your diet, you can live a better life, and that this is actually what my grandmother was able to do. Her mom died about the same age, of natural causes as well, some similar causes. But what happened in February that we had talked about before on the show is that she got to the hospital with the same heart problem, and she was able to get 9 months more out of that, because she changed her diet radically again. And so that was something that I was trying to kind of explain to this person, is that the diet really allows you to live all the way up until you die, rather than having in and out of hospitals, procedures, in pain, excruciating pain, hooked up to machines, etc. So that's something that that I've tried to share with people who have asked me. But everybody who knew her knew that she lived her life, just the way she preached.
Yeah, she
Lots of
was.
love, lots of laughter.
Well, she was so inspiring. One of the things, I think, one of the reasons that her passion for life was contagious, but also she didn't settle for not doing anything. And so many old people, they retire, and then it's like they retire from life just because they retire from their job, but she didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember if I shared this in the last interview when she was here. Is when she was a few years out of her chiropractic school, and she had started her own office. And for some reason, there was some extension cord laying on the floor. And one day she actually tripped on this extension cord, landed on her hip, broke her hip. And she crawled to the phone, got the phone, called for help. And they went to the doctor. They found it was a hip fracture. And then they put her in a wheelchair. And so this was, I think it was 67, 70 something years old. And so, for many people at that age, that's the beginning of the end. We hear a lot of stories where, a hip fracture for elderly people is like, this is essentially the beginning of the end. But for her, it was actually the start of a beginning. Because of this, she said, I don't want to live my life in a wheelchair. She started learning yoga. She started doing stretching. She had already been, changing her diet. But she discovered it and just started dedicating her time to it. So much so that with regular practice, she not only recovered her hip and got rid of her wheelchair. A few years later, she was actually going to Costa Rica with David Swenson to become a yoga teacher at 72 years old, I believe. And we have a picture of her that I've shared in some of my talks at True North and here at Fasting Escape. We have a picture of her doing headstands with my grandpa as the balance. So she's in his lap with her head down in his legs, and her legs are all the way up at 75 years old on 4th of July. This is what she would do. Every time there was a party, she'd be finding some way to do some yoga pose. And it was amazing. So yeah, her attitude was, just because you've got a challenge doesn't mean you shouldn't try to overcome it.
Yeah, just aging is inevitable, but growing old is optional.
That's such a wonderful way to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she definitely inspired me in the short time that I knew her. I remember, when my grandma passed, I was 26, and that was even harder than losing my parents, because there's something just special and pure about a grandma's love.
Yeah, one thing she taught us grandkids is we knew something at a young age that no other kid our age knew, and that was she would actually pick us up from school. And she'd pick us up from school, and then before she dropped us off, she would one by one, we'd sit in the driver's seat in between her lap, and she'd teach us how to drive at 8 years old, 9 years old. And so we could steer the steering wheel. And she said, no, it's okay. I'll teach you how to drive. And that way you learn from me first.
That's hilarious. Oh my goodness. Are you open during the holidays at Fasting Escape? Can people still come if they have such a bad relapse that they just can't recover?
Unfortunately, we're not open during the holidays, but we are opening first week of January. We have, I think, we have one more spot left that I'm calling somebody back today to talk about. But yeah, if someone needs to come and have them give me a call, you can go to fastinescape.com for the phone number, or just book a phone consult, or you just call me or email me, and we'll get back to you and see what the best dates are. But yeah, we're not open for the holidays this year.
I mean, no places except for Crazy True North. That place never closes.
Never closes. Dr. Goldhamer's a workhorse.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever taken a day off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about work ethic. Yeah. I always like to know, like, I wonder who inspired him. Like, it's obvious how much your grandma inspired you. I always find it interesting to see who made a difference in people's lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that's inspiring with my grandmother is she actually, since your interview and even before that, she was on Instagram and social media. So she had developed a bit of a presence, a really small presence, but every once in a while she would post something, and then there's internet trolls everywhere, and there's the highly disagreeable people that just can't let anybody have some thunder, right? And so she would post on there, and then once in a while these disagreeable trolls would come out. And you could just feel the love in her comments. Like I wanted to read you guys something on one of her posts where some guy just decided to talk smart to her, and her response was so the guy comments, and her response to him was so thanks for your positive post, but I feel sorry for the angry people and wish them well. I can't change. I've been positive all my life, and I love people and want to help. I understand that people struggle. I empathize with them, always with love and hugs. I mean, this is how, and she said, I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for people like you. They're struggling. God help you. Thanks for your kind words. I mean,
That's hilarious.
You just never let it get to her. It's, I think probably nowadays with so many comments, probably the best thing she would advise is just turn off the comment section. Don't spend time on those people. But she found a way to make it work.
Absolutely. Did she listen to your podcast? I think, in case you guys don't know, and some of you were saying this is the first time you're seeing the voice behind the Beat Your Genes podcast, Nate's the producer. Was she a regular listener?
She listened every once in a while. She said that sometimes she had trouble hearing it because in the beginning episodes, we had some audio troubles. But yeah, she listened once in a while. What we would mostly talk about when we would talk on the phone, once, twice a week or so. And I would fill her in on some things. And so she would say that she would agree with some things, she would disagree strongly with other things, but she was so gracious in the things that she disagreed with that you could never tell that she disagreed too strongly.
She would have been great at having you. Now hindsight's 2020. It would have been great if you produced a podcast for her. She would have been incredible.
Oh yeah, I think she had so many things to say. I mean, here, and she would blurt them out too. Here's a little story just for some of the listeners here. So my grandmother, when she got into yoga, she did all the different styles. She would spend a couple of years at a time at these different styles of yoga. And then she eventually found out about Bikram Yoga, which is yoga heated up to like anywhere from 106 to 118 degree heat. And so I was working at this yoga studio before, when I was in college, it's like, doing just basic front desk work. And so I introduced her to it, and she started going with my grandpa. And of course, she's the oldest person in the class. She's 75, something like that. And all of a sudden, she's now doing it regularly and doing all the poses. I mean, she's doing it like a 75-year-old, but still like just amazing that she's surviving this class. And she got to know all the students there, all the teachers, and the owner of the studio. So one day I'm cleaning up the mats and the towels, and she's getting ready to put her mat down. And there's the entire room is filled with students. They're all doing their savasana, waiting for the class to begin. And the owner, Joe, he tells her, says, "Wow, Rosa, it's so impressive and so amazing that you, at your age, you're able to complete these classes and you're doing so great." And she looks at him, she goes, "Yeah. And Sam and we're having sex also 3 times a week." And she's like, God. Yeah. And she's like, just blurting this out for the whole room. And you could just hear these people like trying not to snicker at her comment. But from that, it's just incredible. I mean, she said, "What's there to be embarrassed about? We're living life. We're having fun." I told her, I joked around with her afterwards, and I said, "How'd you feel about this comment?" She goes, "What's there to be embarrassed about?"
Oh.
She said, "If I could, I'd be singing from the rooftop." from the
That
replay.
is great. Yeah, it's like she didn't care what other people thought about her. And those are the kind of people I like Dr. John McDougall. I love those kind of people.
And she, she really, her motto to me was, hey, just because you're embarrassed doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. That she goes, yeah, so what? She would tell me every time I would talk to her about things. Oh yeah, so what? You're embarrassed. So what? That's all. That's her comment. So what? Do you want to do it or not?
That's interesting. Yeah.
So,
Did other people in your family have the same relationship with her? Were they inspired by her as well? Because I know you have brothers. I don't know if you have brothers. I know you have a sister, and I'm sure you have cousins and things like that.
my grandma was such an incredible individual that she connected well with everybody. I had a friend of mine come visit me during summer, and we stopped by at my parents and my grandparents' house, my parents' house, to just say hello for 4th of July. And my friend, I just talked to her today, told me that in just one afternoon with my grandma, she felt like she was connected with her on a whole different level. So my grandma was just an amazing person. She was close to everybody, including my sisters, my dad, my mom, everybody in the family. So just hard not to be close to such a person who's not sitting there, stressing over little details. She's trying to get the big picture, which is to love everybody and enjoy her life.
Does your grandpa have the same enthusiasm for life?
Well, he for sure has the same a similar enthusiasm for In-N-Out burgers. So he's looking forward to to eating a few more of those. But no, he's an incredible grandpa, and the fact that he was married to her for 65 years, it just incredible. I mean, he lost a friend. He lost a life mate. So
That's incredible. They've been married longer than I've been alive, and I've been alive a long time, 60 years. It's beyond comprehension. Wow. Guys have any questions for Nate? Do you guys remember the show with Dr. Rose? I posted a link to it, so if you haven't seen it, you can catch up. Her Instagram account is still open.
It's Dr. Rosa Love. Yeah. Yeah, one thing that the thing that she got interested in. So her story in a chiropractic school was she was as we talked about before, she was 55 years old, getting chiropractic school, and she had been struggling with her weight, didn't really know anything about diet or natural hygiene or anything like that. And there was a student there who was bringing a lunch pail with just fruits and vegetables, and she was curious. And eventually he told her, "No, I just eat fruits and vegetables. I don't eat anything else." And that's how she got into the diet. And then she started reading books, raw food cookbooks. I don't think she read McDougall cookbook. She was kind of, it was ahead of her time in the sense that she had started this, and then I think it was just a different part of the world essentially. So, but she started reading things, getting interested, and then that's how she changed her whole diet. And then when we were growing up, she would come in and throw away junk food from the refrigerator, and that's how we got into it. And so when I started getting interested in health, she told me, go up to this fasting clinic up in Northern California, and they'll be able to teach you what you want to know. And so that's how I got to True North Health Center as a patient. And then when I walked into True North, I thought, well, this is what I want to do. And I talked it over with her, and she says, yeah, if that's what you want to do, I think this is the place to do it. And that's how then I got to True North, worked there for a few years, and then came down here to start the fasting escape. So, and she had come here several times. We'd have her come over for dinner every once in a while, and meet the patients. And every patient just was inspired by her. It was just incredible to watch the interaction between people who had been sick and now are not sick. And she would inspire them. Before they left, everyone told me just how much fun they had at dinner with her.
Well, she could have been on the speaking circuit.
Yeah, we wanted to do that, but she was nervous to fly. She actually, we wanted her to come to the Natural Hygiene, the National Health Association conference last year, but she was, as she was getting older, she was a little bit nervous about it. So.
Well, lots of people like Laurel are sending love and condolences. And Gina wanted to know, how many grandkids did she have?
She had 5 grandkids. So I have 2 cousins, and then 2 of my sisters, and then myself.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
How did she know about True North? Because I didn't even know about it until I knew about it, which was only like 10 years ago.
When she got involved in yoga, of course, you get involved in any of these things where people are paying attention to their own health. word spreads around. And so she had heard it from some conference, some yoga practitioner somewhere, about she called it the crazy juice fasting clinic up in San Francisco. And so, this is when Google was just starting. So when she told me about it, I right away Googled it and found the website, and then called Dr. Goldhamer. But she had actually never been there until I went there. And then a couple of years later, she decided that her and my grandpa, they were going to go and just try a week stay there and see how they liked it.
So did your grandparents actually fast?
Yep. Yeah. So my grandma and my grandpa, they both fasted, I think, a couple of days. And then they broke the fast and then refed. But overall, they liked the feel of it, and it was really, really interesting to see her actually do the fast, come out of it. And then a couple of years, maybe 10 years later or so, she came to me with a couple of health problems, and so we did a short fast with her as well, which helped her solve them. And then when she got into the hospital the first time in February, she, this is part of the screening process, is that I didn't think it was appropriate for her to do a water fast. We just had her eat the food, as compliant as she could. And that was what helped.
Brenda Lynn says, I love meeting Rosa while at the fasting escape last August. And Teresa says she's lucky to have had you for a grandson. Why is your grandpa such a stickler? I mean, I guess you can't argue if he's 90 and in good health, but still.
Yeah, he is who he is. And the thing is my grandma was such an inspiring force that I'm sure that he knows what he's supposed to do, and he knows what what depending on what his goals are. So, but the truth is that if we look around our lives, people listening to your program, Chef AJ, people who follow your program, people who listen to Dr. McDougall, Dr. Lisle, Dr. Goldhamer, Caldwell Esselstyn, Rip Esselstyn, Jeff Novick, all T. Colin Campbell, Joe, all these people who listen and they kind of are interested. That's a really rare bunch. It's just a really unusual amount of unusual type of openness, unusual amount of conscientiousness, and an unusual amount of intelligence. In terms of dietary, I call it dietary obsession. And so not everybody's like that. And so my grandpa was lucky enough to live with my grandma. And I think even if she hadn't been doing the diet the way she was, I think they still would have had a wonderful relationship. So I know that was a source of a little bit of disagreement in their life, but overall they had such a wonderful relationship that it really didn't matter too much. In fact, we would talk once in a while, and I say, grandma, let grandpa do whatever he wants. Like, he's his own adult, and how does it affect you? And her main thing was that it would tempt her, and that was the big thing. So that was a legitimate concern, but still, it can't really change anybody. They have to want to do it themselves. So
I know that's what I find. It's so hard for people when the people aren't on board, because I mean, I guess if you were going into it, if you'd always eaten healthily, then you pick somebody and you marry somebody. But in most cases, if I find that people change their diet later, usually for a health reason, and then they're stuck with the spouse that eats crap.
Right. And that's the thing is people are locking themselves into this, and then changing their mind in such a huge way. It's almost like someone changed their religion, you know what I mean, in the middle of a marriage. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough all the way around though, because if someone's single and they have a certain diet, it's a lot easier to get ruled out because you appear very extreme and very picky, and all kinds of different inferences can be made. So yeah, overall, I think my grandpa will, he'll like I said earlier, I don't think the diet really makes as huge of a difference as far as, you're not going to live 30 extra years, 20 extra years, maybe 4 if you're lucky, maybe 5 or 6. But, my grandma's mother died, I think at 83 or 84, I believe so. So, she got a couple of extra years than her mom did. So.
But I think it makes a difference with how well you live, maybe not so much how long, because most people that I know that are elderly live in a state of debility, maybe for sometimes up to 10 years,
Yeah, it's called squaring the curve. So if we actually were to draw a curve as far as loss of function, what we're going to see is, I'm going to try to draw it here, is you're going to have 0% loss of function as time goes on. And then as time goes on, you're going to have more and more loss of function until you have 100% loss of function, and then you die. And so that curve can be like this, where you have loss of function every year of your life, starting when you're 40 or 50 or 60. or you can square it so that you live all the way up, and then it's a very quick drop between when you start losing function and when you pass away. So that's what diet will help, is to square that curve and to help you live all the way up until you die. So my grandma, when we talked on the phone, I asked her how she was feeling, how she was doing, and she told me she had had a great week, but the last 2 days just felt a little bit off. Just felt something was off. And so she was, she didn't feel that hungry, and she just felt something was off. And she just thought maybe, she couldn't really put words to it. She just thought, well, I'll just, sleep it off and then see what happens. And then that was the evening she passed away and didn't.
Wow. In her sleep, right?
In her sleep. So, her biggest concern was she didn't want to be a burden to her family, to her husband, to her grandkids. And she got her wish. So.
Well, Jody says, Dr. Rosa's episode is very memorable. We're also blessed that you shared her with us this year. And Gina wants to know how Grandpa's doing. I can't imagine how hard it must be for him.
Yeah, he's doing okay. I mean, he kind of felt like he had a weight lifted off his shoulders after the funeral, because he heard so many stories from different, from his grandkids and from other people, sharing stories about his wife. And so he shared with me, he said, first off, he really, thinks that she got these extra 9 months because of the food she was eating. She was walking every day in the park, and she was living her life. And then he also just felt like, he had a good run, and that, nobody lives forever. So he's a very practical guy. And so he misses her a lot. I know that. But, yeah.
It's just like, I just always say to Charles, you just better let me die first. I don't want to have to grieve. I really don't. I'm very selfish. It's like, I don't care when I die, as long as it's first, Yeah. So Robin says, your family is so fortunate to have been inspired by such a strong, smart, health conscious woman. Hey, would you mind taking a couple of questions on fasting, since
absolutely.
Okay, terrific. Because that's what you do. So let's see. Do you find fasting comes naturally if you just eat when you're hungry, or is it a conscious effort to fast for predetermined time frames? And are there fasting precautions for medicated diabetics?
Yeah, so there's two questions. The medicated diabetics I'm going to leave to the end. So the first question about essentially when is it good to fast, and can you actually, is it good to fast when you're eating a healthy diet? And the answer is it depends on the person. But in general, my typical stance is that we don't want to be fasting just for no reason. Okay, and so you can, if you start to lose your sense of taste for healthy food, that's a big signal that it's time to do a short fast. Okay. You can do some fasting if no one's really perfect on this diet except for maybe a couple of people. And so I don't really recommend that people are fasting constantly, all the time. I think that what we want to focus our efforts on is eating really healthy as much as we can. And then if you start to feel run down, tired, you didn't get good sleep, you start to lose the taste for healthy food, that's when you want to institute a fast. In general, that's the signal that you want to do it. So if you get sick, one of the first things that happens is you lose your desire for food. And that's another signal for your body to stop processing food and then eating the food. As far as disease processes, fasting appears to affect disease processes faster than when you're just eating the food. But that doesn't mean that people shouldn't eat the food and just use fasting as a medication. What my belief is that if you have a disease like diabetes, okay, the first thing we want to do if you're on medication is institute a behavioral change. Okay, so if you can do that at home and you can start to eat fruits, vegetables, potatoes, rice, beans, etc., all the things that Chef AJ is talking about in her show, and all the foods that we look at, that we see in a whole food plant-based diet. And if you do that very strictly and very diligently, it's a good chance that your blood sugars start to get under control. Okay, however, that's not always easy. Okay, that's probably the most difficult thing to do, especially because the environment's not going to be exactly right for this. You may not have enough momentum. It may be so difficult that just beginning may be tough. Okay, and so this is where people may call me and say, "Hey, I want to do this. I'm having trouble," and that's where we can bring you in to the fasting escape and have you stay a short while, even if it's a week or 10 days or 3 weeks or whatever it is, and just feed you the food. Okay. Now, a lot of times people say, well, I want to get off my meds and I want to do a water fast to speed this process up and to reduce the insulin resistance and to improve the taste buds much quicker. So I don't have to grit my teeth and suffer with a tasteless food for, a whole 30 to 90 days that it takes for the taste buds to readjust. So in that case, what we do We have them come in and we eat the food long enough so that their blood sugar, their blood pressure, whatever the numbers that they're trying to improve enough so that so that they can discontinue the medication by their doctor's permission. And so when that happens, then we can wean them off, and then the patient can start to fast. And then when they do the water fast, now they're primed and ready, and they've just had excellent food into their system for the water fast. And that's when we institute a water fast. And then we can do the water fast for several weeks if we need to. And then we start to refeed the person properly so that they don't just go home and just get into whatever's in their cupboard. But while this is all happening, I encourage patients here to either bring a journal or some sort of notes. Well, what you want to be doing is brainstorming, how are you going to do this at home? Okay. And not the fast. I'm talking about how are you going to eat the food at home? Do we need to set up a system where we have a lock that only your husband has the key to? Okay. That he gets to put all his crap in there, and then he's got to do that. Okay. Is he willing to do that? Okay. Is it as already back on track? And so it's a lot harder to kind of budge the person off of their path if they've already created a few grooves in the dirt. So you think of a wheelbarrow, you're rolling the wheelbarrow in the same groove. It's going to be hard to nudge that wheelbarrow off if you've got a few grooves in there. Okay. But the first time it's going to be difficult if you got a heavy weight. So that's what we want to be thinking about. If you're a medicated diabetic, I don't recommend doing any water fasting, because we don't know how medications react when someone's fasting. And so we want to be cautious. All medications are toxic. That's why it's called pharmacotoxicology. But the dose is what's the problem. And so from what I understand with toxicology and pharmaceutical agents is that when you're fasting, your liver and your kidneys are much more sensitive to the pharmaceutical agents. And so we don't want to be damaging the liver unnecessarily. We don't want to be damaging the kidneys unnecessarily. And so for that reason, we don't do fasting with any medication except for maybe thyroid medication. But that's kind of I hope that answers your question, but that's what we think about when we're thinking about whether to fast, when to start fasting, and what considerations we have for diabetics and medicated diabetics.
Right. So Mandy says, so if people don't have the taste for healthy food to begin with, it could help them to fast to get off the fast food?
Yes, absolutely. So it's going to turn out, I want you to imagine walking into a really, normally lit room like I have here. And then, it's not sunny right now because it's December. But let's imagine you go outside and it's a sunny, bright, sunny day. What's going to happen is your eyes are going to squint. Okay. And they're squinting to protect against too much brightness. Okay. But what's going to happen is if you stay around that brightness, your eyes are actually going to adjust, and you're going to actually be able to normally see, and you're going to be able to open your eyes normally. Okay. So this is what's called neuroadaptation. It's a process where your brain adapts to outside stimulus. Okay. Now, what's going to happen is if you go from the bright outside and you go back into a room like this, it's going to look very dim. Okay. Because your eyes have adjusted to the high stimulus of the bright light. Okay. And so when you're in what appears to be a darker room, all of a sudden it now takes another 10, 15 minutes or so before your eyes adjust. And now you don't have to squint to see dark. Nothing's dark anymore. Okay. And so this process of neuroadaptation actually happens to every single one of your sensory organs. Okay. So your nose, okay. Imagine, it's Christmas, going to be Christmas tomorrow. So if you go hang out with family, you walk into the house and you smell a Christmas tree, you're going to notice that in about 20, 30 minutes, you're not going to smell that Christmas tree anymore. Okay. This is a adaptation for your sensory organs, sensory stimuli for your nose. Well, the same thing happens with your taste buds. Okay. If you have been eating a lot of fast food in your life, if you've been eating lots of salt, lots of rich foods, oil, animal foods, etc., then what happens is your taste buds have developed, they're used to those types of foods. And so it makes it very difficult. Now, all of a sudden, Chef AJ says, go on, you should eat, 6 baked potatoes or 6 sweet potatoes, a salad without any salt, oil, and sugar. And conceptually, you might know she's right. Okay. But when you start eating that food, it actually tastes pretty awful. It's bland. You need butter on it. You need cheese. You need sour cream. You need bacon bits, whatever it is, salt, all that stuff. Okay. So that's a signal that what you need to do is actually get off the rich stuff. Okay. That's a lot harder than it sounds. Okay. Because what you're doing is you're fighting your genes. Okay. Your genes are trying to get you to eat food that tastes good. Okay. So what we need to do is, first off, if you can white knuckle it and just grit your teeth and deal with the tasteless food at home, then it takes about 30 to 90 days for your taste buds to adapt to the low salt, low fat diet of a vegan whole plant foods diet. Okay. If you do a water fast, because you're not putting anything on your taste buds except for water, that process gets shorter. Instead of 30 to 90 days, it now can take anywhere from, a few days, 4 or 5 days, all the way up to a couple of weeks, depending on how, the sensitivity of somebody's taste buds. And so fasting, in addition to the other benefits of it, fasting can really help people kickstart a healthy diet, because now when they're done fasting and we refeed them properly, the healthy food actually tastes really good and really decent, so that when they go home, they're not dreading eating a salad. They're not dreading a baked potato. They're not dreading brown rice by itself. They're not dreading, steamed vegetables. They actually taste quite good. And the other thing happens is just the fact that you're staying away from the unhealthy food. Your brain, the way it's processing memories, is it fades into the distance. So you might remember what cheese, like people who have been vegan and avoided things, they might remember what cheese used to taste like, but it's not loud enough to make any, significant craving. And so this is, you get away from it, you break that cycle, and all of a sudden now you can get that momentum back.
Yeah, that's great. And I've seen it happen. And that was my favorite part about working at True North, is because I would have to deliver the first meal to people in the room when they broke the fast. After they broke the fast, and then they would get a little juice, but their first solid food was always steamed zucchini, which, people would say, what that, but they would have like they would have like food gasms, because if you haven't eaten in a week, everything tastes good. Even, yes, steamed zucchini. And then people could really taste like the saltiness and the sweetness. And it was like Harry Met Sally when they would eat their zucchini. I'm like, what's going on? Because I've never fasted, but but I think that if people can be diligent, they could just eat the whole natural food without the sugar, oil, salt, and it would take longer, but they could eventually learn to love, whole natural food. Dr. Lisle says we're supposed to love whole natural food.
Yeah, we're supposed to. It's just that in the face of all the other foods, the whole natural food doesn't seem quite as good. And now if you add in that you've got extra fat reserves on you, all of a sudden your brain's making a very accurate and very sophisticated calculation saying, I got plenty of reserves. I'll wait for the good stuff.
Oh, that's funny. And if you're living in an unclean environment, the good stuff is just a cabinet away. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Why should I force myself to eat it if it's already there?
Yeah, absolutely. Mandy says, does Dr. Gershfeld know any doctors in Australia doing this? Doesn't Greg Fitzgerald?
Greg Fitzgerald. I believe there's Greg Fitzgerald for sure. He has spoken. I've chatted with him a couple of times. Excellent. Just a very decent guy. Greg Fitzgerald, just look him up there.
Yeah. And he's been on the show twice. So yes, check him out, Mandy, for sure. Yeah. Laurel says, I've recently been diagnosed as hypothyroid. Can fasting help and reverse it? And if so, how long of a fast would you recommend? And she's local. She's in LA. She could technically take that last spot.
Mm-hmm. It depends. So it's not a for sure. It's not a for sure thing like diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and high blood pressure. However, what would make a difference, just in my experience, is whether or not someone is on medication and how long they've been on it, what their levels of the TSH are, and also what symptoms they're showing of hypothyroidism. Very often, you can have hypothyroidism clinically. Hypothyroidism by lab work, but it's subclinical, meaning they're not showing any symptoms. In which case, sometimes it just resolves on its own. Sometimes it doesn't, but I would want to talk to her. So Laurel, shoot me an email, or I know we've talked before, but shoot me an email and, or schedule a phone consult on my website. And then we can chat more and see if it makes any sense to do a water fast.
Great. Jael says, how does fasting affect our gut microbiome?
So fasting actually, because the gut, from my understanding, because the gut doesn't have any food to feed it while you're fasting, you're not really feeding the bacteria. But when you start refeeding the fast after the fast, that's when the important thing. That's when it's important to have good food into your system. Okay, so the things that we want to be considering is that foods with high fiber, foods with both soluble and insoluble fiber, are what feeds the good bacteria. And so fasting allows you to get back on track and eat the right foods so that you can feed the good bacteria. As far as what the specifics are, I'm actually not so interested in the specifics of which bacteria is it, Bacteria, Lactobacteria bacillus, or is it the acidophilus, or whatever it is. I'm actually not so interested in that, because what I'm trying to do is back up the camera and look at what is it that we're trying to accomplish. Okay, we're trying to accomplish being healthier, happier, and a more effective human being. Okay. And in order to do that, we've got to be eating an appropriate diet. We've got to be sleeping an adequate amount. We've got to be exercising an appropriate amount. We've got to be responding to stress appropriately. And so fasting is a tool to get us there. Okay. Rather than trying to solve one particular issue and then not worry about the rest. So that's kind of my attitude. There isn't much to say about the bacteria in your gut other than we've got a bunch of bacteria and we got to feed it the right stuff.
Nice. Let's see. Any other questions? Somebody's saying their husband isn't on board and it's difficult. Do you see that a lot most of the time with your people, that it's a problem for them?
Yeah. What I would say actually is there's going to be, I've seen all spectrums, the spouses come, the wife drags her husband over, kicking and screaming, or once in a while the husband brings the wife and then they're both on board and they both have decided that they're going to kind of do this together. But one kind of thing that I would want to say about that is, from what I've seen, and I'm going to see how I can say this because I'm not quite as diplomatic as Dr. Lisle. But what I actually have noticed, and that I've talked to patients here who tell me about the troubles with their spouses, don't make it a competitive process with your spouse. Okay. You don't want to be watching what they're eating and pointing it out. Okay. This is your journey. This is not their journey. Okay. And so this is your journey to try to figure out on your own. And if your spouse, if you are loving towards your spouse, we would hope that they are trying to help you on their journey. But it can sometimes get lost. The message can get lost that it's your journey if you're trying to also get them to eat this way. Okay. And so this is why I said earlier is that, does it take the husband who's not eating, all the right foods? Maybe he should get a refrigerator or a pantry and put his own lock on there. Okay, that would be a non-judgmental way of saying, hey, honey, I don't care what you're eating, but I just can't control myself when I'm around it. And so I would really appreciate, maybe we can run an experiment for 3 weeks where we can lock up your stuff and then you cook your own stuff, but then you put it right back and let's see how that goes. Okay. In this way, now all of a sudden the husband or the spouse isn't quite so defensive and they're not defending their honor essentially and saving face. Okay. By fighting. Okay. What we want to be doing is we don't want to be fighting the friends in our house. Okay. We don't want to be fighting those people. We want to be enlisting them to help us. Okay. And if we're trying to enlist them, we have to accept that, hey, we're not good at this. Okay. We are not perfect. This is why the pleasure trap is called mastering the hidden force of health and happiness that undermines health and happiness. Mastery requires that you start at the beginning. Okay. And so you're either, you start at the white belt and then you're a yellow belt, then you're an orange belt, and then you're whatever, blue belt, purple belt, whatever it is.
Brown, black.
Black. Yeah. And so this is, and even once you get to black belt, you ask any black belt, training doesn't end once you're a black belt, you keep going. Okay. So this is an ongoing thing. One thing that my grandma used to say is that she never stopped learning. She's a, lifelong student. Okay. So it may be worth considering approaching this problem. If you're having some difficulty at home with a spouse that's just fighting you each step of the way, of course, it may just be possible that person's disagreeable, saboteur, and it's just never going to change. But before we jump to that conclusion, let's see if we can take out the competitive aspect of it and really, make it be a little bit submissive. And I hate that word, but I can't think of a different one. But be a little bit humble about the fact that you're not great at this, and you're just trying hard, and you just need some help. Okay, that would be what I would say about it.
Or just find somebody that eats like you before you get married.
Yeah. Or find someone who eats like that.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. I think, there seems to be a preponderance of, at least I know women that are older that haven't been married that want to get married. And it's like, they won't compromise at a certain age, it's different when you're younger, but like the women I know that are like in their 50s that have never been married, that are vegan, they don't want to date non-vegans and they don't want to marry.
They all got health problems, and they're going to be their caretaker essentially. They're going to have
and they don't even want to kiss somebody that eats meat. It's like kissing a smoker. So I guess it depends how old you are when you first, because I know that was a deal breaker for me. I mean, even dating, I wouldn't date a non-vegan?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to girls, on the dating arena, and just the fact that I'm vegan makes them feel, like that they can't enjoy their life, So it's the thing is that the dating arena is hard for everybody, and so we want to focus on what we can do rather than what somebody else has to do for our life.
Yeah. Dina wants to know what happens to the bacteria when we fast.
From what I understand it's actually your gut is sterile while you're fasting, and then you actually the bacteria actually grows back when you're done fasting.
That's cool. That's why I think it can help so many people with their GI stuff when they fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen it many times, and sometimes it takes longer than we expect, meaning that you can do a fast, refeed, and then it might take another few months as things slowly change because there's been so many changes there that we're just not aware of.
That's neat. Robin says, what is the mechanism that the body self-heals when someone who has an active autoimmune disease does a water fast?
So there's you may have heard of a term called leaky gut syndrome, and that's exactly what it sounds like. So you imagine your gut is a tube from one end to the other, and this tube is it's not a pipe. It's not like a PVC pipe. It's a mesh screen, and this mesh screen is very tightly wound. And so what happens is that when there's inflammation, when there's damage to that area, then what happens is it spreads out a little bit, and molecules that get in there that shouldn't get in there, and then your body essentially tags them. And if they have a similar DNA to human DNA, like an animal protein, then your body can react and tag them incorrectly, and now it becomes an autoimmune disease. And so how we postulate that what the research shows as far as postulating what happens is that you simply remove the what's called the antigen, and then your body can essentially heal itself. And so fasting allows every single antigen, except there's no antigens in water, so every single antigen to be removed from your gut, and so it allows the fastest process. However, if someone changed their diet, many times I hear stories and I read cases of people who had autoimmune-like symptoms, and they just changed their diet from a standard processed foods, animal-rich diet, and they changed it to one of whole plant foods, and they start to improve their symptoms. Okay? This is the case where you're essentially removing the cause of the problem, and so let your body figure it out.
Great, thanks. Tracy wants to know what kind of toothpaste do you recommend? Should it have fluoride or not?
I think I don't use a fluoride toothpaste. I use one of my friends joke around whenever they see it. They call it the hippie toothpaste, but yeah, I use one of the natural ones without all the chemicals laced in there. One resource that I really like is called the Environmental Working Group, and they've got it's an endless amounts of data on there about the different cosmetics and shampoos and toothpaste and things like that. So I looked up one that I really liked that didn't have all the crap in it, and then I bought like 20 of them, and then I put them under my sink and I use them.
Do you remember the brand? I love a good brand.
I can't remember the brand, but I can text it to you a little bit.
Okay, great, thanks. So I tried something called Earth Paste that seemed pretty natural because they were giving it out on the cruise, so I figured it was probably okay.
Yeah.
So I know you answered this once on another broadcast, but what made you leave electrical engineering and become a chiropractor?
Well, this is where my grandma comes in. So when I was in my junior year of electrical engineering, I was doing great, doing my senior project, having a good time. But there was it was actually December 5th, actually, the day that she passed away. So, but yeah, my mom noticed I had a tumor in my neck. It was like a big golf ball sized, almost peach sized tumor in my neck. So I went to the doctor. They said, oh, they wanted to do an ultrasound. They did an ultrasound. They said it's a tumor, and we don't know if it's cancer or not. So we want to do a biopsy, and then we're probably going to cut it out, depending on what we find. And we're either going to cut out one lobe or both lobes. And I said, well, I'm not cutting out anything. So I went to my grandma, and she said, well, you didn't have to go to the doctor to know it's a tumor. We know it's a tumor. She goes, I know what you eat. I see what you eat. It's all crap. So you have to change she basically told me I have to change my diet, I was already doing exercise. So she basically gave me the principles of natural hygiene, which is address, get your body as healthy as you can, and then watch what happens. Let's see what happens afterwards. And so she wrote me this 3-page thing of what I should be doing. And I started going off the deep end, reading about it and trying different diets and trying all the different, magical things like supplements. And powders and, potions and pills and whatnot. So anything to not do the diet. And then I finally started changing the diet, and then I eventually found out about True North, and then from her. And so I booked a stay, went up there to fast. I was kind of a wimp, so I didn't last all 30 days. I mean, I was the same size that I am now. So you can imagine 30 days of fasting on this body just was not going to happen. So, so what I lasted about 5 days of water fasting, and then came back after the refeed. And then about a few months later, I did an ultrasound, and the tumor had shrunk by 80%. The autoimmune disease of Hashimoto's that I had reversed itself, and I no longer had hypothyroidism. So in my case, I'd never taken any medications for it. It was relatively new, relatively subclinical. I didn't have any symptoms, but I was able to reverse that hypothyroidism and reverse the Hashimoto's, and the tumor shrunk by 80%. And since then, I haven't really checked it too much. So that experience got me really interested in health and wellness and diet, and just the philosophy of natural hygiene. It just really appealed to me. And my thinking at the time, I was going through electrical engineering, my final year at this point, and I thought, gosh, what am I going to do? Like, I'm going to be sitting in a cubicle all day long programming or, designing products. Like, that doesn't sound very fun, because I wanted to get immediate feedback from patients rather than long term. It takes like 2-3 years for an engineer to do a project, and then the only person who thanks them is their manager, and maybe their teammates, they go out and have a drink afterwards. So I wanted that immediate feedback. And at that point, a lot of my friends and a couple of my family members, they were starting to ask me questions about nutrition, about, things like that. And just from what I read, I was able to uncover some kind of answers that made some sense. And so, and then when I started thinking about True North, when I walked in there, this was before they had the big building. It was a house in Pengrove. I walked in and I was like, God, this looks doable. Like, I actually want to do this. And so then, I applied for a master's for applied mathematics and engineering, got in, and it was set to go in September of that year. But for some reason, I got some letter from the chiropractic college locally and said, "Oh, you got a scholarship because of your engineering background. You want to come in for a tour?" I thought, well, there's a sign right there. So I went, got a tour, and just decided, you know what, I want to do this first. And then I did the chiropractic, and there we go. I randomly called Dr. Goldhamer, said, "I just stayed at your center. I love what you do. I've read all your articles. Can I come learn from you?" And he let me come as an intern right before I started chiropractic school. So just got lucky all the way around. But all started with my grandma. So
that is so cool. And how did you hook up to become a podcast producer? Did you have any experience producing podcasts?
No, I had done some interview with somebody who had used Blog Talk Radio. And I had called in, and I thought, wow, this is brilliant. Like, I didn't have to do any work as the interviewee, the interviewee. And then I just called in, I looked at it, and I thought, this is pretty easy. And then at the same time that year, we had a board meeting with the True North Health Foundation, just kind of discussing strategies for the following year, studies, things like that. And Dr. Lisle I had always tried to make it to his lectures at True North. And his lectures were always weave in these brilliant explanations. Then at the end, it's like, so you got to beat your genes. And you got to beat your genes. And these are what the genes are trying to get you to do. And if you want to be happy, you have to beat your genes in this case. And so at that board meeting, after we had dinner and we had 6 hours of talking, we all decided to go for a walk. And I snagged Dr. Lisle so I could walk next to him. And I started asking the questions because I had kind of gotten interested in evolutionary psychology from his lectures and other sources. So I started asking questions. And then a few months later, I said, Dr. Lisle, I've been thinking of doing a podcast on your theme called Beat Your Genes. And I was hoping maybe you'd want to be interviewed by it. And he told me, he said, well, I've been wanting to do this as well. So that's perfect. I said, great. Look, can we start, are you willing to do it? And he said, well, if you're willing to go through the trouble of setting everything up, then I'll be happy to interview. And so for the first few podcasts, I wasn't sure actually if he wanted to continue doing it or he just wanted, because it was a 1 or 2 or 3 interview thing. So if people listen to the earlier episodes, I usually...
Yeah, because there was like a guest on an early, and I remember like early, there was a couple guests sometimes, right?
Well, so I remember signing off and I would say, Dr. Lisle, I hope we'll see you next week. I was trying to guilt him into coming back the following week. And then it took because I'm an HCNC, a hyper conscientious nutcase, like it took me, I think 30 or 40 episodes to realize, okay, he's here to stay, and we're going to be doing this thing. So
I know I was like so upset because nobody told me about it until like it was like episode 50. And then I had to really catch up. But now I've never missed an episode, sometimes listening more than once. Because actually I was waiting because this morning when I woke up, I was like, where is it? Where is it?
Did you get that little 1 minute snippet?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That was just a epic failure on my computer. So
is it up yet?
No. After this, I'm gonna be uploading it.
Yeah, so. And I gotta say I'm a little disappointed that it's now only twice a month because I really looked forward to it. Kind of built my schedule around that show.
Well, I do encourage people who like listening to Dr. Lisle and Dr. Hawk that they do. We wanted to make room for I guess they wanted to do. They have a live video show where they do Q&A as well. So that would be a way to listen more as well. And they have esteemdynamics.com is their website. So they have a lot of content there, just starting from the beginning to the fundamentals, and then they've got their Q&As as well. So, and I think right. Dr. Hawk is starting a Zen with Jen, moments of Zen with Jen, or something like that. So that's something.
Yeah, well, maybe you could do something else on the other weeks. Who knows?
Well, next week we're having a end of 2020 show, so that'll be a little different. So.
Oh wow, that's wonderful. That'd be great.
Well, just little snippets of past shows that I really liked. So
nice. Florence said, "Did your tumor decrease 80% right after your water fasted True North?"
No, that's actually a really good question. So this is actually, I'm going to answer it kind of broadly because anytime someone's doing water fasting, there's going to be some chemical changes and some biological changes that are occurring, and so we don't want to actually retest very quickly right after the fast, because in the tumor's case, you don't want to be dehydrated. You don't want to have less fluid in you, which is what fasting will create, is a little bit of dehydration. And so we want to give it enough time. So that's why I checked my tumor about 2 months later. And so it's what I recommend patients do if we have people with like uterine fibroids or even like A1Cs and diabetics and having these types of issues, is I'll recommend that after you fast, wait about 2 to 3 months, 8 to 12 weeks or so, and then do a blood work just to confirm that things are actually better. Because if you do it right after the fast, things are going to be skewed. That's not going to be accurate. And you might have a false sense of hope if things appear to be normal when they actually aren't. So yeah, great question.
Great. That's terrific. Well, this is hours gone by pretty darn quick, if you ask me.
I can't believe it. Yeah.
I know. Well, I had an aunt that would say this: "You've got your fingers in a lot of pies."
Well, hopefully they're all pecan pies that you bake, Chef.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I still have a little bit in my freezer from when you came.
Then you have self-control, because that was a long time ago that I brought you that pie. That's amazing. Anybody else's house, that would have been gone.
Oh, the other stuff was gone immediately. And it's not to say that your pecan pie was great, but I don't like too many nuts. So
no, I don't blame you. Yeah. You'll probably see enough of them in your career.
Takes one to know one for me, at least.
I know. Well, that's what Dr. Lisle lovingly calls most of us HCNCs, hyper conscientious nutcases.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Welcome to the club, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I just said that. I don't get people that are not that way. That doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. But you're right. It takes one to know one. We need to get T-shirts for sure.
Yeah. Well, friends always tell me, "Oh, you're overthinking it." And I say, "No, you're underthinking this."
Exactly. People say to me, well, you're always criticizing me. I say, I'm not criticizing you. I'm just pointing out where you're wrong. Anyway, one day we'll have to bring your dad on to tell the story about when he worked for the U.S. Postal Service.
Oh my God, yeah.
That will be something. That was one of the funniest things ever. We'll leave. We always have to leave the audience with wanting more. So thank you so much for coming on. And again, so sorry for the loss of dear Grandma Rosa, Dr. Rosa, but she has been an inspiration to so many and made you the man you are today to help so many other people with their journey.
Thank you, Chef AJ. And, one thing that she told me many times since that interview is just, she's always wanted to do this. And she had been wanting to, back when she started, preaching her ideas, there was no YouTube. Like, in order to get on TV, you had to be famous and you had to know someone who's famous. And so she's just so thrilled from being on the show. And all the amazing comments. I read back some comments to her after the interview. There was one person on the YouTube comment says, I'm 67, and when I grow up, I want to be just like Rosa. Things like that. She was thrilled. So thank you, Chef AJ, for giving her, the time of her life. And thank you to the listeners and to the viewers for giving her such great feedback. I think she lived her life all the way up until she died, and she didn't have any regrets. And I think she would do it all over again in that same order.
And now she will live forever on YouTube. How do you like that?
Absolutely. It's incredible.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gershfeld. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. We have 3 hours of live programming scheduled for you tomorrow, Christmas, because realize not everybody is going to be with their family. Some people, because of the pandemic, can't see their family. They'll be alone. So we want to have a lot of programming. At 2 p.m., we're going to have a very special guest, Richard Hubbard. He has just published a new book because he has lost 150 pounds. And we have our 2-hour cook-along special tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time. It is not too late to join. Just go to my website, Chef AJ website, if you didn't get the email with the shopping list. And we have 7 of the best SOS-free chefs cooking tomorrow. You're going to watch tomorrow, Dr. Gershfeld? We're going to be making Christmas dinner.
Oh yeah, I'll put it on for a little bit for sure. So
right, we got Chef Bravo
wouldn't miss it for the world.
Yeah. Well, I'm making fruitcake, and so that's a big
I'm
deal.
Definitely going to watch that. Yeah,
Right.
I don't think I've ever eaten a dessert, Chef AJ, that you made that I didn't like.
Well, thank you. I always used to say that. I want to be cremated, but if I had a tombstone, I wanted to say she never met a dog or a dessert she didn't like, and that's the truth. All right. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays, Dr. Gershfeld, and I hope to talk to everyone soon.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, everybody.
Bye-bye.